After contemplating an extension, Sars Commissioner Edward Kieswetter has agreed to a further 2 years at the Revenue Service. The presidency's extension of his term is understood to be for an orderly leadership transition, as Kieswetter's restored the tax authority's stature and credibility over the years. And joining us to unpack Kieswetter's term in greater detail is Editor-at-Large for Business Day, Hilary Joffe. Hilary, a pleasure and a good afternoon to you.
Afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show.
Perhaps you can't talk about Edward Kieswetter's term at Sars without speaking about the Sars that he found when he got there. Can you, Hilary?
Indeed, I think it really had been wrecked under the leadership of Tom Moyane, who, as you will recall, was appointed by President Zuma and clearly with something of a mandate to make sure it didn't go after the rich and powerful during Zuma's time. The Nugent Commission of Inquiry found pretty severe wrongdoing, found the tax authority had really been eroded in terms of its integrity and its capacity. Tom Moyane was finally fired in 2018 after being suspended and refusing to leave. And then there was an interregnum where Mark Kingan took over for some time and started, I think, the process of rebuilding before Edward Kieswetter was appointed for a 5-year term to be the real turnaround guy, which I think he has really been.
Let's talk about what that work has been like. I can imagine that being the revenue collector in a country is it's not the best job in the world, but you have to make it work. And most importantly, Hilary, you have to be very good at it. It's what we all depend on to have an economy, to have a budget for a finance minister to even, give.
Absolutely. That is the revenue which is spent for social and economic good. That is the revenues that supports government's pro-poor policies, if you like, and supports the budget. I think it would be fair to say that for much of the last several years, revenue has come in below budget estimates, except for the kind of couple of years of the commodities boom where it came in way, way, way above. But that, and I think during the Zuma years, that was certainly to quite a significant extent the fault of Tom Moyane's Revenue Authority itself. During the 5 years that Edward Kieswetter has been in place, I think he has demonstrated quite significant compliance achievements. It's hard to disentangle those from the commodities boom and so on, but I think the point that he would certainly argue quite strongly is without the turnaround at SARS, you would not have had that revenue. He says in the current year, compliance has yielded 210 billion of the 1.7-ish trillion. That wouldn't have happened without collecting the debt, making sure that people pay that they owe, chasing defaulters, and so on. So I think the process of restoring SARS has very much begun during his time, and that's been really important to government's ability to spend, especially in a very, very weak economy. But the extension of his term, I think, is an effort to make sure that that turnaround continues.
I must ask you about that. He has 3 deputy commissioners working under him, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on that. Is this traditionally how a commissioner has worked with 3 deputies? And, is there some sort of succession planning that we're aware of? Even if it's not happening now, will it happen in the next 2 years? Because, of course, he can't be at the helm of the Revenue Service forever.
I actually understood that Edward Kieswetter always intended to serve only 1 term, for his own sort of family reasons. And in June last year, SARS created the posts of these 3 deputy commissioners and installed 3 quite highly regarded people in those posts, of which I have heard, but we shall see, Johnston Makubu is the front runner to take over. But those people are relatively newly in their positions. And perhaps it's not yet decided which of them it's going to be. So I think the extended term, perhaps one can but speculate, is an effort to make sure that the 3 deputies get bedded down in those posts, have a chance to gain experience, show what they can do, making for a smooth transition sometime during the next 2 years.
And with that said, Hilary, the appointment of a SARS commissioner completely at the mercy of the president. Hey.
It is indeed. And in fact, the Nugent Commission had recommended a more a more transparent, if you like, more predictable process. I mean, we've seen with the Judicial Services Council that having a panel of people doing the appointing isn't necessarily a good thing in and of itself. It has to be the right kind of panel. But the Nugent Commission had recommended some governance reforms at the tax authority, and I'm not sure that those have been implemented to any great extent. I think it had wanted to ensure greater independence in the to ensure good governance at SARS. But for now, at least, it is within the president's power to appoint these at SARS just as it is. Well, in consultation, after consultation, or consulting with the Minister of Finance. I know these niceties do matter. Just as it is the president's prerogative to make the appointments at the Reserve Bank, which we are, of course, still waiting for.
Yes,
but at least we have some certainty and clarity for now at SARS.
Yes, I want to ask you about that because, of course, this year is the year of all these terms coming to an end. And, I keep having to speak about the issue of it being an election year, but it's also just not the year for, the rocking of boats and for institutional uncertainty. I'm wondering if we're expecting that an election year will have an impact on this. And if this extension of Edward Kieswetter's, appointment isn't evidence of that, there's just already too much uncertainty out there.
Look, I think that's why it's a very good outcome, given that I understood he wasn't terribly keen to serve another 5-year term. I think it's a good thing that he has agreed to another 2 years, because even without the particular challenges of this particular election year, and knowing less about the outcome than we've known in the past few democratic elections, the problem with an election year is that it's sort of quite paralyzing. In the run-up to the election, it's quite hard to get decisions made because government kind of does nothing, basically. And in the few months after the election, a new administration is settling in, bedding down. And again, it's quite hard to get decisions made. And I think to have a SARS with uncertain leadership at that time would have been pretty disastrous. Equally, I think the same goes for the Reserve Bank. We have the vacant post of Deputy Governor Naidoo, who left last year, and we have 2 other deputy governors whose terms of office are coming up to terminate in August. And we have the governor himself, Lesetja Kganyago, whose term ends in November. So I don't think it would be good for the country or the economy to have that uncertainty lingering. There is some talk that the president could not only make an appointment to replace Deputy Governor Naidoo before the election, but extend the terms of the other 3, which I think would be a very, very good outcome and would give us some clarity and some certainty at a time when, as you say, this is an election year with all the overhang of uncertainty that comes with it. And these institutions are really, really key institutions for the country. And given that we have such growth and public finance challenges, I think having these 2 very strong institutions, along with the Treasury itself, is one of the few things that is holding up our ratings and our stature in the eye of investors.
Well, hopefully we will see some stability there, Hilary. All of us are rooting for it, I'm certain. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. That was Editor-at-Large for Business Day, Hilary Joffe.